Hello everyone and welcome back to the My Football Writer YouTube channel, and in this video Freddie Humphrey Wakefield, if you don't know me already from the prior videos, I'm going to be reacting to the words of the new Norwich City manager Johannes Hoff Thorup, the club's Executive Director Zoe Webber and the club's Sporting Director Ben Knapper. They had a fan forum tonight at the Forum, today being the 8th of July, of the day of recording this video, just in case I upload this afterwards and it seems a little bit outdated, but hey ho. So straight into it, Johannes Hoff Thorup, the new Norwich City manager, straight away, what really stood out to me was the fact that he was talking about Adam Idah. Now, this is a player who we've discussed many a time in the podcast episodes. If you haven't watched them, you can do here on the YouTube channel, or you can listen to them on Spotify. But Adam Idah, a player who really has now got to crack on with his Norwich City career, and it seems as if Ben Knapper and Johannes Hoff Thorup are two people who really want him to do that now, and they believe it's at this football club. Of course, had a brilliant loan spell with Celtic in the back end of last season, but both Johannes Hoff Thorup and Ben Knapper said that they're a player that they get excited about, a player that makes them feel excited about watching football, and a player of which Johannes Hoff Thorup is really keen to use. His big quote from it was, "It's not the player you have to change, it's the environment." Now that couldn't sum up Adam Idah any better, really, I think, because again, this is a player who arguably has been a bit of a scapegoat at Norwich City. He's never, of course, that could be down to performances on the pitch, at least in some people's viewpoints. Arguably, he's not been that great. He's not really reached the heights that many thought he would after he scored a hat-trick against Preston in the FA Cup in his debut. But really, as I said, this is a time in his career, and I've said it on the podcast, now is the time for him to become a first-choice striker. Whether that does happen, of course, there's a certain American striker who would disagree with Adam Idah being the first choice, but could this be really that Josh Sargent, this could be a subliminal message that he's on his way out? I think that could be very much how you could read into it. And I think that would be detrimental, really, at first for Norwich City. Josh Sargent is a fantastic player. We all know that as fans. We watch him every other week at Carrow Road, and even in the away games where we're quite dismal, he still has big says on games. He's a fantastic striker for this level. But the only way Adam Idah is going to break into this team as a striker is either if Thorup system uses two strikers or Sargent leaves. That's how I see it anyway. I'd like to know your thoughts on that and what you all think. Let us know in the comment section below, as with anything else we're going to be covering. But another big thing as well, when Thorup asked about his tactics that he's going to be bringing to Norwich City, he doesn't want it to be boring. Those were his words. He doesn't want it to be boring, and he says there's risk involved in how he plays. He wants to create patterns in possession. That was something made evident in his very first club interview, and that'll be interesting to see how Norwich City look to really, how they do that, because that is certainly something of which they haven't really had done under David Wagner. That was very much a counter-attacking team who absorbed pressure and just looked for the odd chance just by stealing the ball or stopping an attack and getting forward. But he even actually quoted England with how they're going on right now in the Euros, again, something which has been covered, excuse me, a bit too much over the recent weeks in the media. But that was his sort of key comparison in terms of course, you get results. That is ultimately what football is about. It is a results-based business, and you get the results you want. But in terms of, that was more to do with in terms of entertainment. He did say that is something which he understands fans want. They want to be entertained. So does he as the manager. He wants to play a very good brand of football that is pleasing on the eye. But that is sometimes how it is just going to be. I think that's something of which we're going to have to learn to accept, especially if it does well, because you can't really criticise something that goes really well week in, week out. Albeit last season you could criticise it, especially away from home, and the differentials between games away from home and at Carrow Road. But that seems to be something that Thorup wants to fix, that he wants to make consistent. That's the key word, really, that has surrounded Thorup since he's come in. Consistency. That's what this team needs to be all about. They need to work really hard in possession. They need to learn about keeping the ball. And as well, he even said if say we're winning a game 2-0, he hopes that the fans aren't too unhappy if we just keep the ball, knock it around and maintain a 2-0 lead. And personally, that's something I can get behind. As long as we're winning games, that's all I care about. Of course, that's all they will care about as well. But that links on really to sort of their aims at this football club. Johannes Hoff Thorup and Ben Knapper have both said that the aim is to be up as high as they can in the table. Thorup believes this is a team and a club that can get promoted. Knapper again has said he knows the expectations fans have set upon the club because of how well we've already done last season and how well we've already done in this division many a time. But another thing he said was he believes that factors that are outside of the club's control, they're not going to be too discerned about that. I think that's a decent comment to make. I can't get too angry about that, but of course, because that is effectively what it is. You can't control what other teams are doing when you're not playing. Like, you can't control all their results. You can hope for results that benefit you elsewhere, but you're not going to always get them. Like, that is, I think that's a very fair point to make, as I've just said. And then, sorry, I was just sort of moving on a bit quickly for all this. Sorry if I'm going a bit too fast, but you can always rewind and re-look. But going on to the transfer strategy. Now, this is something in the last podcast we did over the weekend that we did touch on. It seemed like there was a real cause for concern that Norwich City aren't looking at many a player, and that we don't seem urgent enough with signings, which is still true. There's only been one first team incoming in Jose Cordoba a couple of weeks ago from Levski Sofia, but there's been no, for what fans may think, there's been no address made on the lack of a left back, especially after Sam McCallum and Dimitris Giannoulis were released. Well, they didn't have their contracts renewed, rather. And then even a defensive midfielder, but seems as if fans, I should say, are more focused on that left back area. And that is something which was raised at this fan forum, that was brought up, and both Knapper and Thorup have said that they are actively in the market for a left back, which is brilliant to hear, because we only have Guilherme Montoya, who's only played academy football and been on the bench for the first team a few times. So that is a major concern. And then the only other left backs we've got there are academy players who probably haven't even got on a first team match day squad. So that is very refreshing to hear. And even Ben Knapper did say that the Euros have halted business a bit. I think, again, that is fair. I think that's probably true, because you're more worrying about your players that are out there, and I'd imagine a lot of staff, when they have their time off, just want to watch football. Like, that is ultimately their job. But that's what I believe is, again, a fair point. I think that is right to say. I would imagine that, and come nearer the end of the window, which is, again, Ben Knapper said this, nearer the end of the window, it's going to pick up. Business will pick up. Of course, we'll have the first few weeks to identify maybe who isn't going to work in Thorup's system, who is going to work, albeit if the opening games go really well. Of course, that again is something that can't be sort of looked into just yet, because it's still a month away. We have no idea how well or how poorly this is going to go, but evidently they're still looking for the right players in the right positions, because we do need it. Norwich City need that right now. They need a left back desperately, but it needs to be a player who can understand the system and adapt to it. And that was another key thing of transfer strategy, with Thorup saying that he wants his players to understand the tactics. He wants them to have a good knowledge of football. Just, of course, they're players, they'll know their positions, but he wants them to understand his ideology clearly, and he wants them to be able to integrate that and have a smart footballing brain. Now, and of course, you can say that for any team and any player. You want them to be a good footballer, because otherwise, why would you bother playing them? But I think, again, that is a very fair point. I think that's really, I mean, I'm going to sound like a broken record saying that, but I feel like that's really, this sort of sums up the entire fan forum from what I was reading on the Pinkins Live blog. I couldn't make it because I live in Brighton, but it does sound very refreshing from what we've heard so far. Zoe Webber was asked more about the club's running and its financial stance, which she said was good. Marco Tanasio's investment has allowed the club to just deal with its debt internally. Of course, this is a man who we have rarely seen around Carrow Road, but then again, he lives in the United States of America. He's not exactly going to be hopping across the pond every other week, excuse me, again, to come to Carrow Road. But again, that sounds good, again, refreshing. Of course, this club is still going to have debts because we rely on a self-funding model. Again, something which was brought up, and Ben Knapper said that we put pressure on ourselves to sell because it is the business model we run and we know we have to do it. And we already know how many big players have been linked with moves away. Gabriel Sara straight away with Roma, Marcelino Nunez to Turkey, which seems to have died down. I would imagine Josh Sargent and John Rowe are going to be a big interest in the coming weeks, especially now Crystal Palace have got rid of Michael Elise to Bayern Munich. I know John Rowe was a player Crystal Palace looked at halfway through the season, as did Wolverhampton Wanderers, but there's been nothing in the summer just yet, so let's keep our fingers crossed and touch wood or anything that we feel superstitious that can help out. But again, some very good points, and it does seem as if these three are all on the same page, which is massive. That is a big thing, because with David Wagner, that didn't seem like it. With Dean Smith, that didn't really seem like it. It seemed like maybe there was, I think, with Stuart Webber there, maybe he got on with Dean Smith and David Wagner from the outside looking in. Of course, I have no idea what goes on behind the scenes. But I think with this appointment with Thorup, this is someone who Ben Knapper really wanted. We even paid a compensation deal. We didn't go down the free agent market for a manager who's just either left his club or been sacked, which is quite big if you're going to appoint a manager, to pay a compensation deal. But so it does seem very refreshing. I think this fan forum, again, has gone down very well. They do usually seem to go down well with fans, and they all seem to hear the right things and get questions answered, which they really want to know. And I think, especially now with a new manager, there's going to be so many, and they have all been answered in a very good way. And just by reading some of the comments and the whole thing, it just sounds really exciting. Again, the excitement levels are building so much around Norwich City at the moment. I think this is a very good time to be a fan right now. Of course, that could completely turn on its head. It could go absolutely awfully under Thorup, or it could go very well. We know what happened the last time we appointed a foreign manager in the off-season. That ended up being okay after a season of letting it just develop and be put on the back burner a little bit to learn the style of football. And then look what happened the next two championship seasons after. Just ignore those Premier League years, but who knows what will happen. It's all very exciting, and we're all hearing what we want to hear. Could Adam Idah be Norwich City's new main striker, and will he really kick on under a new manager? Are the club going to continue to be all right financially? Are we going to see any sales? Are there going to be more incomings? Are we finally going to get a left back that's going to be in the first team? And are these players going to understand the tactics, to have pre-season to properly learn them, get into the new season, crack on with it, and make it look absolutely effortless? Or will that require too much effort, and we could see the Great Dane's tenure? Look at me already calling him the Great Dane. That's how excited I am. Could we see Johannes Hoff Thorup's tenure end early? Who knows? Pre-season starts. Our first game is on Saturday. Players are back in training. Let's all just see what happens over the next 4 weeks, and then we can all look forward to that trip to the Kassam Stadium on opening day. I have been Freddie Humphrey Wakefield. Thank you so much for watching this video here on the My Football Writer channel. Make sure to check us out on all of our social media accounts. I'll leave a link to those in the description. Even the My Football Writer website, if you want to have a guest article and write your thoughts on the fan forum from tonight, or anything related to Norwich City. Again, I'll leave that in the description. And also make sure to like this video and subscribe. I have to say thank you ever so much for your continued support of the channel since we began the revamp just over a month ago. We've gained a few subscribers, and every video we've done has been hitting triple-digit views. So again, I have to thank you all so much. Thank you for watching. Make sure to keep posted here on the My Football Writer channel for when we upload our next video, and I will make sure to see you for it here on My Football Writer.